9:40 a.m. local time. Northern Arabian Sea. The ocean is calm, almost perfectly still. Bright morning sunlight spreads across the water as a U.S. Navy carrier strike group moves steadily through the Northern Arabian Sea. At the center of the formation, a massive aircraft carrier cuts through the deep blue surface, its wide flight deck glowing under the rising sun. Two guided missile destroyers patrol the outer perimeter, maintaining precise spacing as their sensors quietly scan the horizon. High above the formation, an E-2 Hawkeye circles in a wide orbit, its radar sweeping hundreds of miles across the sky and sea. On the flight deck, ground crews prepare fighters for the next launch cycle. Engines idle, radios crackle with routine instructions. Sailors move with calm precision. To anyone watching from the outside, it looks like a perfectly ordinary morning at sea. Inside the Combat Information Center, radar sweeps glide calmly across glowing displays. Merchant ships appear as slow-moving dots along the distant horizon. No threats detected, no warnings issued. But 200 feet beneath the calm surface of the ocean, hidden in the cold darkness below the strike group, two submarines are already moving into position. They have been tracking the carrier for hours, and in just a few minutes, 4 torpedoes will surge out of the deep, racing silently through the water toward the largest warship on Earth. The strike group above has no idea the attack is about to begin. Do you think the carrier knows the submarines are there? Comment yes or no. 9:52 a.m. Deep inside the aircraft carrier's sonar room, the atmosphere is quiet and intensely focused. Operators sit in front of glowing displays, headsets pressed firmly against their ears, listening to the endless rhythm of the ocean. Most of the sounds are familiar. Distant merchant ships, slow ocean currents, the low mechanical hum of the carrier's own propellers echoing through the water. Then one technician suddenly pauses. A faint metallic rhythm slips through the background noise. Soft, slow, mechanical. He adjusts the frequency filter and listens again. The sound returns a steady pattern of rotating blades, cutting through the sea. Propeller cavitation. His eyes narrow as he studies the waveform moving across the screen. The signal is too controlled, too deliberate to be civilian traffic. Then another pattern appears beside it. A second acoustic signature. Different blade spacing. Different rotation speed. The technician leans closer to the console. 2 contacts. The sonar supervisor steps beside him, studying the display as the computer begins comparing both signals with the acoustic library. For a moment, the system processes the data. Seconds later, the classification appears. Iranian diesel-electric submarines. And the most alarming detail isn't what they are. It's where they are. Both contacts are already inside the strike group's outer defensive perimeter, moving slowly and steadily, closing the distance. 9:56 a.m. Far below the surface, where sunlight never reaches, the ocean is dark and silent. Inside the lead Iranian submarine, the control room glows under dim red lighting. Gauges flicker quietly. Sonar screens pulse softly as the crew tracks the massive target moving far above them. The aircraft carrier. More than 1,000 feet of steel and aircraft slicing steadily through the water. The submarine captain studies the tactical display in silence. The distance indicator slowly begins to count down. Closer. Closer. A few miles behind the strike group, the second Iranian submarine adjusts its course. Its propeller turns slowly, carefully minimizing noise as the vessel slips through the deep black water. The plan is simple. One submarine moves ahead of the carrier's projected path. The other slides quietly behind the formation. 2 angles, 2 attack vectors. Inside the torpedo bay, metal launch tubes stand ready. Crew members check pressure gauges and targeting data as the firing computer continues refining its solution. 4 torpedoes are prepared, each one capable of devastating a ship many times smaller than the carrier above. On the tactical display, the targeting circle tightens steadily around the moving formation. The submarines are now in position, and the distance to the carrier has entered the most dangerous zone of all. Firing range. Attacking a carrier strike group, brave or a mistake? Like video and comment brave or mistake. 9:58 a.m. Inside the aircraft carrier's Combat Information Center, the calm rhythm of routine operations suddenly changes. A sonar report flashes onto the tactical display. 2 red contacts appear beneath the blue formation. Submarines. The strike group commander studies the screen for only a moment before understanding the situation. The geometry of their movement is clear. One submarine is moving ahead of the carrier's path. The other is closing in from behind. They are setting up an attack. Distance, within firing range. The officer of the deck doesn't hesitate. General quarters. Within seconds, the sharp electronic alarm echoes through the carrier's steel corridors. Crew members move instantly. Hatches slam shut. Weapon systems power on. Across the strike group, destroyers increase speed and shift into defensive positions. On the flight decks, anti-submarine helicopters roar to life as their rotors begin spinning. Above the calm morning sea, everything still looks peaceful. But beneath the surface, 2 submarines are already preparing to fire. 10 a.m. 200 feet beneath the surface, inside the lead Iranian submarine, the attack console glows in the dim red light of the control room. The targeting computer finishes its calculations. Range, optimal. Bearing, locked. The torpedo officer watches the numbers stabilize on the screen. Above them, the enormous silhouette of the aircraft carrier moves steadily across the ocean, completely unaware of what is about to happen below. He turns toward the captain. Solution ready. The captain nods once. Fire. A violent burst of compressed air erupts inside the forward launch tube. A torpedo shoots forward into the dark water, its engine igniting seconds later as it accelerates toward the target. Seconds later, a second torpedo launches from the same submarine. Miles away, the second Iranian submarine executes the same command. 2 more torpedoes blast from its tubes, racing through the cold ocean. 4 weapons now slice through the water at high speed. Back aboard the aircraft carrier, inside the sonar room, the technician suddenly jerks upright. 4 sharp propulsion signatures explode across his headset. His voice cuts through the room. Torpedo launch. Then another operator shouts the words everyone fears. 4 torpedoes inbound. 4 torpedoes incoming. Does the carrier survive? Comment survives or hit. 10:01 a.m. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tactical display erupts with motion. 4 red threat lines streak across the screen, each one representing a torpedo racing through the water toward the center of the strike group. Impact time, less than 2 minutes. The officer of the deck reacts instantly. Hard rudder, full power. Deep below the carrier, massive turbines surge to life. The propellers bite into the ocean, churning the calm morning water into a violent white wake as the enormous ship begins a slow but critical turn. Around the carrier, the destroyers move just as fast. On the port flank, a guided missile destroyer deploys acoustic countermeasures. Cylindrical decoys launch from tubes along the hull and plunge into the sea. Seconds later, they activate. The water fills with artificial noise simulated propellers, false engine signatures, electronic echoes designed to imitate the massive acoustic footprint of the carrier. To a torpedo's guidance system, the ocean suddenly becomes crowded with targets. Within moments, 2 of the incoming torpedoes begin to drift, their guidance systems confused by the growing wall of deception. But the other 2 continue forward, unaffected, still locked on the carrier. Above the water, anti-submarine helicopters roar into the air, racing toward the attack zone. Below the surface, the final 2 torpedoes accelerate, cutting straight through the chaos, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Would decoys fool a modern torpedo? Comment yes or no. 10:02 a.m. On the port side destroyer, the anti-torpedo warfare officer watches the sonar display with steady focus. One of the incoming torpedoes is still cutting straight through the water, ignoring every decoy deployed so far. Launch Interceptor. A compact defensive torpedo fires from the destroyer's launcher and plunges into the sea. Within seconds, its small propulsion system ignites, sending the weapon racing beneath the surface. Now 2 objects move through the dark water at incredible speed. 1 hunting, 1 attacking. Inside the sonar room, aboard the carrier, operators track the signals as the distance between them collapses rapidly. Then, a violent underwater explosion rips through the ocean. A towering column of foam and bubbles erupts on the surface as the interceptor destroys the first incoming torpedo. One threat eliminated. But the battle is far from over. On the tactical display, 2 torpedoes have already been pulled away by decoys, and one final weapon is still racing directly toward the aircraft carrier. 10:03 a.m. Inside the Combat Information Center, the tension becomes almost physical. On the large tactical display, a single red line cuts straight toward the carrier's blue icon. The final torpedo. Distance, 300 meters. The officer watching the screen grips the edge of the console as the numbers begin to fall. 250 meters. Outside, the massive aircraft carrier continues its hard turn, its propellers tearing through the sea. The wake behind the ship grows wider as every meter of movement tries to shift the torpedo's attack angle. But the weapon keeps coming. 200 meters. Inside the sonar room, the sharp whine of the torpedo's propulsion system cuts through the operator's headsets. Still tracking the carrier. 150 meters. On the nearest destroyer, the anti-torpedo officer makes the final decision. Launch interceptor. A second defensive torpedo blasts from the launcher and disappears beneath the surface. Its engine ignites instantly, screaming through the water toward the incoming threat. Now 2 weapons race toward each other in the darkness below. 100 meters from the carrier. 80 meters. Inside the combat center, every eye locks on the screen. 2 signals converge. For a split second, the ocean holds its breath. Then, a violent underwater explosion tears through the sea. The final torpedo disappears. Interceptor versus torpedo. Who wins? Comment interceptor or torpedo. 10:05 a.m. For several seconds after the explosion, the ocean falls strangely quiet. Inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, sonar screens slowly clear as the static fades away. The red torpedo track is gone. The aircraft carrier has survived. But on the display, 2 red contacts remain. The submarines. The strike group commander studies their positions carefully. The torpedo launches have exposed them. Every shot leaves a trace. Pressure waves, acoustic disturbances, tiny signatures that experienced sonar operators can follow. The defense phase is over. Now, the hunt begins. Above the ocean, anti-submarine helicopters already circling the area descend lower toward the water. One aircraft slows to a hover and lowers its dipping sonar into the sea. Seconds pass. Then the sonar operator hears it. A clear metallic echo. Submarine contact confirmed. Without hesitation, the helicopter releases a lightweight anti-submarine torpedo. The weapon splashes into the water and activates instantly, its onboard sonar sweeping the dark ocean below. Far beneath the surface, inside the nearest Iranian submarine, the crew hears the unmistakable sound. A torpedo. Hunting them. 8 a.m. Deep beneath the surface, the first Iranian submarine has already disappeared from the sonar display, destroyed by the helicopter's torpedo. But the second submarine is still moving. On the tactical screen aboard the carrier, the red contact suddenly shifts course. The submarine increases speed, turning sharply south in a desperate attempt to escape the strike group's perimeter. Inside the vessel, alarms echo through the narrow control room as the captain orders full power. But diesel-electric submarines have limits. They are silent. Not fast. Above the ocean, one of the destroyers has already moved to intercept. Its powerful sonar array locks onto the fleeing submarine within seconds. Target confirmed. Moments later, a heavyweight anti-submarine torpedo launches from the destroyer's hull and plunges into the sea. Below the surface, the submarine sonar operator hears it almost immediately, the high-pitched whine of an incoming weapon. Decoys deploy. Engines surge. But the torpedo is faster. Within seconds, a massive underwater explosion tears through the ocean. On the tactical display, the final red contact disappears. Can the submarine still escape? Comment escape or destroyed. 10:12 a.m. Gradually, the violence beneath the ocean fades. The towering plume of water from the last explosion collapses back into the sea, leaving only widening circles of foam drifting across the surface. Inside the aircraft carrier's Combat Information Center, sonar operators watch their screens carefully. the tactical display refreshes again and again. No propulsion noise, no hull resonance, no movement below the surface. Both submarine contacts are gone. Above the calm morning ocean, helicopters continue circling, lowering sonar into the water one final time. Destroyers hold their defensive positions, their sensors sweeping the sea for any remaining threat. Minutes pass. Nothing. On the carrier's bridge, the captain studies the quiet horizon stretching beneath the bright daylight. Just moments earlier, 4 torpedoes had been racing through this same water. 4 weapons capable of crippling the largest warship on Earth. Yet the carrier sails on untouched, steady, and still leading the strike group across the open sea. In modern naval warfare, battles beneath the ocean are often decided in minutes, sometimes in mere meters. That morning in the Arabian Sea proved a simple truth. An aircraft carrier is powerful, but it never stands alone. Its real strength lies in the network around it, sonar operators listening in the dark, destroyers ready to deploy defenses, and helicopters hunting threats below the surface. Layer by layer, every system worked exactly as designed. 4 torpedoes were launched. None reached their target. And 2 submarines that once hunted the strike group never returned home. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay with us for more real-world naval encounters that reveal how modern warfare truly unfolds at sea.